I think for us, we've just communicated very clearly to the boys' teachers, like they do have a sibling that's in heaven, and, he would be in 4th grade this year. So I think it also is important because then our boys feel comfortable to share as well with their classmates and their teachers. And they don't always, they're not talking about Philip all the time in school. And I respect that completely. And but I did ask them before I came here, I said, do you think your classmates know about Philip? And Andrew was like, he was a little unsure, but then Peter said, yeah, they do. And like their teachers know about Philip. And
welcome back to the No Foot Too Small podcast. My name is Jackie Selsky. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at No Foot Too Small. And I've been really looking forward to this episode because it's August, it's back to school month. And so we really wanted to dedicate an episode to all of the things that families are navigating as they prep for their kids to go back to school this month. So we're excited to have 2 special guests with us on the couch today. We have Sally Wiley, who is a school mental health therapist, and we have Katie Gaffney, who's a public school educator, to help us just navigate this conversation. So thank you, ladies, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So it's funny to me, you were both recommended as guests separately, but then I found out you know each other. So tell us a little bit about how you know each other.
Well, the president. And let me explain. So Katie's husband, Bob, was in a leadership program that I was chairing. And funny enough, we didn't actually know each other, but we worked in the same world, the same school district. So after meeting him, we officially got introduced, and it was kind of fast friends. We have kids that are around the same ages, and the rest was history.
I love that. So are you from the Iowa City area?
I am from Marion.
And we live in Marion as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So have your careers been in this area most of the time, or?
For me, I was kind of all over the general area of Cedar Rapids, but I actually started here in North Liberty, so not far, and then was in Marion. I also did a small stint in Anamosa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and same with us. We've kind of been all over. We first I taught in Bettendorf, and then we moved to Garner, Iowa, where my husband had a job. And then now our family is from the Eastern Iowa area. Okay. So we moved back, and then that's when I got the job at Linn-Mar, and my husband got the job at Rennerneck. So we've kind of been all over as well, but landed back in Marion, close to family.
Yeah, it's always nice to have folks on that are kind of part of the No Foot Too Small, like home base too, because I think a lot of the families we serve are still in this area. So I have been talking to many of our staff, many of our families about just the complexities of having children who have angel siblings, navigating conversations with them about loss, navigating, how they have conversations about their siblings in school. So I thought maybe I'd start with just, how have you seen loss and grief manifest in the classroom, in your experience? What has that looked like when you've encountered a student who's maybe lost a sibling, either recently or has become aware that they have an angel sibling?
Do you want to speak to the classroom?
Yeah, I think for us personally, since we've experienced a loss with our 2 boys, just maybe like if they're more reserved or quiet, or that kind of the opposite where they act out or they are really angry, I just think maybe being aware of those mannerisms in the classroom is important for the educator. And I think asking questions at the beginning of the year is super important, that you're just very mindful of those questions, because I think it's easy to say, like, who lives with you at home, or like, how many siblings do you have, which could be a huge trigger for those kids, especially if they're not comfortable sharing, or if they're thinking, well, who lives with me at home? Well, I do have one angel sibling that I, don't get to spend time with. So I think just in the classroom, being very mindful of how you start that beginning of the school year as an educator, just so students are able to open up if they feel comfortable to, but if they're not, maybe like right now is not the right time, but maybe they kind of see an insight that eventually they'll be able to open up and share about their siblings that they're not able to live, share experiences with that here on earth.
I'm glad you actually brought that up, because one of the specific examples that was shared with me from a parent was the back to school forms and the questions about siblings, and how sometimes it's just a drop down and you don't even have the option to add some context that might explain why they're behaving that way or choosing not to share or whatever that may look like. So what advice would you, I guess either of you too, from both of your experience, what advice would you have for parents as they're navigating that process? They were asking, should I email the teacher? Should I just fill out the name and the age that they would be? And I know that probably feels and looks different for every family, but just in your experience, what advice would you give to those parents?
I think, the more that a family is willing to share, the better, so that the teacher and the school therapist can know ahead of time kind of what to expect, because then they're better equipped to help the children when they are having an emotional breakdown, or they all of a sudden are reserved, or they're acting out or angry. There's some context there. And so the teacher then kind of knows what's going on and doesn't really have to dive in and dig, and maybe can just give that student some space or grace, or even then refer them to the school counselor to get the help that they need. So for me, I would say, as the school therapist, if I know that stuff ahead of time and the family is willing to share, I'm better equipped to help them ahead of time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just being as open and honest as you can. And I know some families are not, wanting to share. They're just not at that point where they're open to sharing. But I think the more information an educator or a school counselor could know, it just helps their child more in the long run, because then they could, just ask certain questions quietly next to them, independently, that maybe would help them feel more open to sharing in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate you, Katie, opening up about your loss and your story too. And I'd love for us to be able to dive into that a little bit, because what an interesting experience being the teacher and the mom.
I think for us, we've just communicated very clearly to the boys' teachers, like they do have a sibling that's in heaven, and, he would be in 4th grade this year. So I think it also is important, because then our boys feel comfortable to share as well with their classmates and their teachers. And they don't always, they're not talking about Philip all the time in school. And I respect that completely. And, but I did ask them before I came here, I said, do you think your classmates know about Philip? And Andrew was like, he was a little unsure, but then Peter said, yeah, they do. And like their teachers know about Philip. And, I think one thing that we saw in Andrew, who is younger, he was in 1st grade this year. He drew a picture at the beginning of the year. He was asked to draw a picture of our family. And I think the way he did it was so cool, because he drew a picture of Bob and I, and then he drew a picture of Peter, his older brother, and himself, but then he put Philip in the clouds. So he didn't make it so distinct that he, had another brother, but he knew that he wanted to put Philip somewhere in his picture. So he had the clouds, and then he had some angel wings. And I'm sure nobody in his class asked about it, because they're 1st graders and they just don't pay attention to those details. But he, in his heart, knew that Philip was a part of the picture as well. So I just also think if teachers know about that, then maybe they could, quietly call that out to the student, like, hey, that's really cool that you, drew that on your picture, or just making sure that they're aware of the situation, so then they can support the child.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful that he was able to picture that way too, in the way from how you guys have talked about it at home.
We talk about Philip all the time. He's a part of our life and a part of our story. And I'm thankful for that. And I hope, just advocating and making that aware to other families who've experienced a loss, just make them a part of your story. And that's just how we've done it with our family.
Yeah. I love that. I know at No Foot Too Small, we refer to our babies as angels, but I also know in a lot of the work that we've done, it's very evident there is not a clear language around pregnancy and infant loss, right? And every family talks about it differently in their home. And so I'm curious, maybe from the therapist standpoint too, and I know haven't given you a chance to answer about how you've just seen grief kind of manifest in the school system as well, but just how do you navigate that complexity of not always having a standard way to talk about loss in the school, especially with little kids whose brains have a hard time kind of conceptualizing some of these ideas, right? Like what heaven is, or where my sibling is. So talk to me a little bit about what that is like.
Sure. So, in my experience as a school therapist, It's not a cookie cutter. All kids
Sure,
fit
yeah.
in the same mold. So I kind of meet the kids where they're at. Sometimes I know ahead of time, other times I don't. So for me, it's doing what they love. So there were many times I'd be out on a playground swinging with a kid, or they'd be in my office and we're just playing either a game or just an activity. I had a lot of kinetic sand and different characters. So although not official play therapy, in a sense, it was play therapy. And once you get them doing something else, they really start to talk and get more comfortable. So they may come in really crying and upset, but then you start doing the activities that they love and they get calm pretty quickly. And as they're distracted by the other things, they start talking through the hard stuff, not really realizing they're talking through the hard stuff, and getting them to a better place. I saw with one particular kid, their loss wasn't a sibling loss, it was a parent loss. So a little bit different, although the processing was similar. And this child was just completely quiet and reserved, a very different kid than he was the year prior. So I worked with him weekly, trying to get him to come out of his shell. I had not brought out my sand play yet. And when I brought it out, he took one of the characters and put it in a box and buried it under the sand. And we continued to play and I continued to ask questions. And then he really started to open up because he was kind of acting out or showing the situation without having to really say it. But then he was distracted by the play and he did open up and start talking about it a little bit more. And then I was able to engage better and involve the classroom teacher and develop strategies on what he can do within the classroom when he's having these hard feelings or how he could come see me. And it really made a big difference for this kid, but it probably took 6 months to really get in with him where he trusted me and he was able to show or say what was bothering him.
I wish we as grownups could do that sometime. I just want some kinetic sand and just some time to like process, you know?
It's really great. Like the play therapy stuff for those kids that may not want to talk, they don't realize that they are once they're engaged in something that they like to do. And a lot of times it's a coloring sheet with a kid. And even at the middle school level, which is more her area, what kid or adult doesn't like to just draw or color? It's kind of a mindless activity and you kind of forget what you're doing and then you're more open to conversation.
Are there other strategies like that parents and families can do at home to maybe make the conversations around loss feel a little bit easier?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they could replicate almost all the things that I do in schools. Really just knowing what your kid loves and doing that with them will make them more comfortable because you're not just sitting at a table talking about the tough stuff. You're doing something they enjoy. And usually that takes their mind off the real hard.
Yeah. How many students do you think every year you're engaging with are actually actively kind of navigating these conversations at home?
I would say my number was smaller, maybe like 2 to 3. But I also think there were more families out there that might be seeking outside therapy or don't talk about it at home like Katie and Bob do with their kids. And maybe their kids aren't supposed to talk about it or whatever that may be. And so I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
And you're not seeing behaviors or different things that have the teacher sending them my way. So I'm guessing there's probably quite a few kids that are missed.
Yeah, I can imagine. Is it healthier for our kids to have space in school to be able to at least have the opportunity to, whether it's maybe silently process this, or as a trained mental health therapist, I honestly, I just don't know, are there ways that you would recommend that we make sure we are actively holding space for this in the school system? Or is it okay for us to all be doing it differently? I just would welcome your thoughts on maybe how you would advise families who don't know what to do or don't know the best next step and aren't familiar with some of the activities and strategies that you're sharing today. And now it's unlocking a box of opportunity of where do I begin with my young student?
Absolutely. I think there always should be space for anything, whether it is sibling loss or other mental health things that may come up in the school. You think about the teachers have these students for 9 months out of the year, 7 hours a day. It's a big piece of their life. And the learning is not going to happen if there's a lot of stress or emotion happening. So even within the classroom at the elementary level, we had a lot of teachers that set up a safe space or a quiet corner. And there were different things like those little bubble timers you can flip and you watch the water and the bubbles go. Yeah. Different like breathing exercises. In my school, personally, we did a lot of trainings around like relaxation techniques and mindfulness. And those work for kids that don't have loss. They just might come in hyped up because they had a terrible morning and maybe they got yelled at home or whatever it might be. So the cool thing is a lot of the stuff that I do with students who have sibling loss can also work for other kids that are just having a rough day.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I think also, unfortunately, we probably have all experienced a loss at some point. So I think as counselors and educators, maybe making yourself vulnerable to that conversation. And it doesn't have to be the whole class, or it could be in small groups. But I think personally with Andrew, when his teacher was talking about like going to the cemetery, they must have been like reading a book and they were making some, drawing some background information. And like Andrew could make a connection to Philip because obviously we go to the cemetery and visit Philip. So I think maybe unfortunately making yourself vulnerable, whether you're a teacher or a counselor, that you've been, in a situation where you've experienced a loss, then the child maybe is a little bit more willing to share as well, that they can be on the same playing field as the teacher or counselor.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you seen all of this evolve in the school system throughout your careers, or has this been constant? Tell me a little bit about maybe like changes or shifts that you've seen over the years in navigating loss in general or grief in schools.
I mean, I can speak from both sides because prior to doing the mental health therapy, I was a classroom teacher. I do feel like classroom teachers have a whole lot on their plates now with everything that's going on. However, I do think that there has been a bigger shift in mental health and mindfulness and meeting kids where they are and giving them the space to deal with the emotions prior to pushing the academics, which I do think is such a fantastic shift. And I feel like every year it's getting a little bit better.
Yeah, I would agree. And like you said before, Sally, academics, they're not going to come when the child is stressed about what's happening at home or a loss that they've experienced. And whether that loss is last year or last month, it could be, just something that they've been grieving for quite some time. So I think just making sure that they have the resources available, whether it be the teacher or the counselor, I think it's so important for parents just to really try to be open and communicate with schools so they know what's going on.
Yeah. How does the relationship between both of your roles in the school work? So how do you work together to best serve those students that are going through this?
Well, my experience is at the elementary level. And so I work collaboratively with all the teachers. I'm in all the classrooms proactively doing some teaching, meeting with groups. And then I know all the students. So I kind of have a leg up there because I know when they're acting differently. And if I don't personally see it, the teachers do. And so they'll stop into my office and say, hey, can you come visit with the student or shoot me an email? So it was a little bit different for me than Katie at the higher level. But it was awesome to be able to have that collaborative relationship and to know all the kids, because I could sense just being in the classroom if something was off with somebody and ask them if they wanted to visit, or if they didn't, I could tell them they could stop down later. So I loved that. Knowing all the kids was a big deal for me.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, and at the middle school level, our counselors and teachers work so closely together. We have weekly meetings. So like the counselors usually, if anything occurs with a student, they hear first and then they communicate to us if the parents are okay with it. So just that partnership together is huge. So then we can advocate for the child and really do what's best for them. Like obviously if they're having a hard time or if they're just off one day, then, we understand that.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about working at No Fit Too Small is the things that kids say. And some of our events, the family-centered events, and how these kids are just so bravely talking about their siblings. And I think that we have a lot we could learn from them as adults navigating grief. But I'm just curious if you have any special stories that come to mind of students who maybe said something endearing or just kind of like the memorable picture that was drawn, just any like, sweet stories that come to mind over the years.
Oh, I don't know if I have any sweet stories. I do remember my first year at my school after we moved back, I was pretty vulnerable and I was sharing about Philip. And then that's when one of my other students, he shared about his brother, which was pretty powerful because I don't think that would have happened if I didn't share about Philip. Like, actually, I have Peter and then we have another son, Philip, who is in heaven, and then Andrew. And he was like, oh, wait, I've had a similar experience, my mother. So I don't know, he was able to be vulnerable and share his story as well. And I don't think he would have done that if I didn't share our story. So not that it's like endearing or cute, but just a way for students to open up.
Yeah, but powerful. I think we always say our stories are what connect us, right? I mean, if we hold space, if we have the courage to share our story, it often lends that courage to somebody else to share theirs. And there's a ripple effect from that. So I think it's really neat that it's not age, right? It's not age dependent. I think that works for all of us across all generations. So I think that's a really powerful, sweet, endearing story in its own way.
I did have some siblings who they knew that their mom was expecting a baby. And then towards the end of the pregnancy, knew that there was something wrong. So they were kind of prepping the kids, and the baby ended up being born and then passing away within a couple of months. Obviously, the kids were super sad because they then got to meet the baby. The baby got to come home and then ended up passing away. So one of the little girls particularly having the hardest time because it was a sister that she lost. And so I did a lot of processing with her. And then we were trying to come up with a really great way that would help her remember. And so we ended up making beaded bracelets for her and her sister that were best friend bracelets, and she wore them both. And I think the coolest thing for me is the following school year, she came back on the first day of school with those bracelets on and was so excited to show me. So then later on that year, she wanted me to make one that was my name and her name. So that was just really cool. Just like that connection that lasted with her, that she kept them for a whole school year. She wore them again the following school year, and it meant so much to her. And then it kind of turned into a cool thing where kids during indoor recess were making friendship bracelets, and all the kids were wearing these little beaded bracelets with their friends' names on them.
So really what you're saying is you started the Taylor Swift trend.
I wish I could
and we
take
have
credit.
to take credit here, not Taylor
wish I
Swift.
could take
Okay. Just let it be known. Let it be known it was Sally. Oh, I love that. That's sweet. I bet she'll hold on to this forever in some way.
And she would have been a first grader, and she is going to be a sixth grader now. So I would be curious if our paths crossed, if she has memory of that. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, absolutely. That's very cool. Yeah, no, I don't know if this is necessarily in the school, but I can say something maybe as a mom and as a mom who has experienced a loss. So last summer we had, so Philip will be 10 this coming July. So his birthday is July 17th, and it's actually my sister's birthday as well. Oh. So, we really try to celebrate both of them here on earth and then in heaven with Philip. But I think sometimes it gets a little messy because they do have the same birthday, or like we have family events that happen on Philip's birthday. So you kind of go back and forth, like, what should we be celebrating on that day? But like, so Peter and Andrew, they'll always remind me like, well, we need to celebrate Christy, my sister, or this is what Philip would want to be doing. So I think they just like kind of take me back to reality. Like, of course, Philip would want to be, doing all these celebrations and playing baseball in the backyard and jumping on the trampoline. So just making sure that you're celebrating, this is the way that Philip would want to be celebrating too. So they kind of give me back, just a reminder of this is what a birthday should be. And so we go to the cemetery and we celebrate Philip, and we always have a cookie cake, but we also celebrate my sister too. And that's what Philip would want to be doing as well. So just, being able to celebrate and honor your angel, I think is important, but also remember that you don't have to be, you can be sad and being, grieving that day, but you also can celebrate it, in their honor and on their birthday with how old they would be.
Yeah, they kind of help us balance the joy with the grief.
Yes.
I think that's a great lesson. Yeah, any for you, Sally?
I mean, my kids just in general teach me to slow down. We're in such a fast-paced world. And although I have not experienced loss myself, I work with those kids that have. And it's okay for them to come to your office and sit there for 45 minutes and just hang out or color. We don't need to push them to, be quicker or I've got to get you back to class. That's not what it's all about. It's meet them where they're at, take the time, slow down. Everything always works out when you give it time.
Which I think is a takeaway we can all maybe
Absolutely.
focus on a little bit more too. I would love to know if there are resources either in the school or that you're just aware of that our families might benefit from as well who have children in the school system. And, we have a lending library now at No Fit Too Small. We've become aware of some really great books out there. Just curious if there's anything you've come across that might be a helpful resource either to our families or that has really benefited you as you're serving kids in the school too.
I mean, for me, there's lots of great children's books out there. You can just do a quick Google search and it will give you all these great books I still have in my collection. Also, just having activities and things at home or encouraging if the counselor doesn't already have those, sand, toys, coloring sheets, anything like that is fun for the kids. What I love is it can transfer from school to home. So if families navigating back to school are having trouble at home, they can do those things at home. If families are having trouble with their kids on the school side, definitely I recommend letting the counselor know and seeing that counselor. But if there's things they know they love at home, telling the counselor that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, great idea.
It's not hard for us to get those things and to do all of that in the school space. And then it also builds the connection of home to school is all working together. We're all here to support you. We're all on your side. And it shows them that.
And that consistency in how they're navigating what they're going through too is probably, I imagine, so helpful.
Absolutely.
If you can recreate the same thing that helps them at home in school, that probably helps just normalize the conversations that you're having and the feelings that they're having. So yeah, that's great advice.
Absolutely. And I think that could be used not only if they've lost a sibling, but a parent, a grandparent, just lots of things, lots of ways that they can help their child.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I know back to school also sometimes people have a lot of like traditions and, fun things as a family that they do year after year as they're prepping to go back to school. So curious if you have any suggestions, and maybe this is a good question for you, Katie, as you've actually experienced loss and you're, going through this each year with your boys. How do you incorporate your angel? How do you incorporate Philip into some of those back to school traditions that you do year after year?
So Peter will be in 6th grade and Andrew will be in 2nd grade, and then Philip would have been in 4th grade. So I think one thing that parents could do, and we have not done this personally, but you could like buy school supplies and donate them to the school. Like those would be supplies that you're already buying for your, you would have been buying for your child, but maybe donate them to a child that unfortunately, can't buy them, or, just donate to them to the classroom that you would be giving them to, donate them to that teacher. So I think it can get a little bit tricky, with families, how they feel most comfortable to honor their angel during a time of, so much excitement. And like going back to school is so exciting. As an educator, it's so exciting. But I think it could be very difficult for families to kind of wave that, find a path on how to, celebrate their children that are actually going to school, but then also remember and honor their, babies that are unfortunately not. So I guess for us, we just, remember that Philip is, 2 years behind Peter and 2 years ahead of Andrew, but we don't necessarily have anything special yet that we've kind of grasped onto. But the one thing that I would recommend, or maybe an idea, would be to buy those school supplies for ones that, are in need, or just donate them to the school.
I think that's a great idea. Have you heard of families doing that, or did you just
No, I just
come up with that?
No, I
That's
just came up with
lovely.
that.
I love
I was
that.
like, this is what we should do. So
Yeah.
maybe this year. There you go.
I love that. What a way for their legacy to live on too, and to continue providing support to other students that need it in a different way too. That's great. Love that. Thank you.
And that reminded me of a story. We had a family that had loss, and they asked me for some recommended titles because there was nothing in our school library.
Mhm.
And so they actually bought some books and donated them in the Angel's memory to
That's
the school
super cool.
library,
Oh, that's another idea.
Yeah.
I like.
which is awesome.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I feel like we need to get a list of what those books are. Maybe we can share them in the show notes as
Yeah, absolutely.
some recommendations for families. Maybe you guys can help pick your top 5 or something, and we'll spread that out so people know what to look for. Because I also think sometimes that's hard. Yes, there's lots of books out there and resources out there now, but which ones do my kids need, and what topics do I need to search, and all of those things.
Yeah.
What's the hardest part about working with kids in the school who are experiencing grief and loss?
For me, I want to just fix it and take it all
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I know I can't, right? I can be that support person. I can listen to them. I can give them strategies, but I wish I could just make it go away for them. So reminding myself that I am doing good for them. I'm there for them. I'm supporting their teachers and their families and doing the best I can. But I have to remind myself of that every time I start working with a new student.
Yeah, I would agree that you don't want to take that grief away, and you want to make them feel better, and you unfortunately can't. And that's just probably not going to be the reality, but you can make them feel comfortable in your classroom. You can be super kind and in loving to them, so they know that somebody cares about them. And I think that's what's most important. And that's what Sally and I, as a counselor and an educator, we just want that child to know, and those children to know, that we care about them, and we want to listen to them, and for them to be able to share whatever they feel comfortable. But I think, the teacher and educator and me and the counselor and her, we just want to take it away. We want to make them so they're not hurting. But unfortunately, that's probably not the case. Right. I think educators and counselors, they do a great job of just trying to make that bridge with families, and whether it be questions at the beginning of the school year or just emails back and forth. But I do think that if maybe just raising awareness for No Foot Too Small, I think people know about No Foot Too Small, but I think if I would ask, my students, not very many of them would, know what it is, but they also are 12 and 13-year-olds. So, but I think just raising awareness of, what what's out there. And I just kind of go along with like worst club, best people. Like this is a club together where we're working together to raise awareness. So whether that be a loss of parent or a loss of a sibling, or, there's just so many like opportunities for students to have just a grieving point in their school career where, again, they're at school more than they are at home. So I think I do think counselors and teachers work really hard to be able to bridge that gap so that students are able to be more open.
And I think just letting the schools know that you exist, you're here, you're willing to come in, I think is really great. Just having that in their back pocket, that if they do have a staff member that has a loss or a student and they may feel they need support outside of their school, knowing that they can call and say, hey, is there somebody that can come and educate this classroom or our staff or whatever it may be, I think would be really neat. And I would go about that by reaching out to all the counselors in the area and saying, we're here as a resource for you.
Yeah.
We're happy to come in and work with you or train your staff or work with individual classrooms, whatever you need. Yeah.
Well, and again, ripple effect, right? When you're equipped with the knowledge of all the resources out there, then when the parents are working with you, you have resources to share with parents, and it kind of comes full circle and serves the whole family. So the more we raise awareness of all of the different support systems out there, the better. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's great. I always have a special question that I like to ask our mamas at the end. So I'm going to wait and ask you that. But I do want to end, Sally, with just, if there's one piece of advice you would share with our families navigating back to school right now, what would that be?
I would say don't hold back on sharing what you want to share. I feel like some families feel like they're going to share too much, so they give you very little information. But if you feel comfortable sharing it, counselors are willing to listen.
Yeah.
And the more we know, the more we can help. I also think there's no wrong answer to what you're doing during back to school. You're doing what works for you. You're doing what works for your family. You're doing what works for your kids. So if you have a keychain of your angel or their angel's name on their backpack, or they take a family picture or something they've drawn and that makes them feel good and that helps with the back to school process, do it. Your teachers will support you. The staff in the school will support you. The counselors will support you. So I think anything that you need to do at home and any information that you can share with the school is going to help everybody.
Those are great tangible examples of things that families can be doing. Yeah. So I appreciate that too, because sometimes I think we don't know where to start. So
And I like the keychain idea, just like something simple that they can remember their angel sibling throughout the day, and just something that is very special for them.
Absolutely.
And that could even be an art project that you do at home, a craft project that you do as a family, and make your own, kind of like the bracelets. Like, I love that. It's just a lot of therapeutic process of healing, of creating that too. So yeah, great. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Katie, but this is my favorite question to ask because it's why we're here, right? So I'd love to know if you could say anything to Philip today, what would that be?
I would say that he has two brothers and a mom and dad that love him so much.
Clearly.
So we are his team, and we love him so much.
Yeah. So you guys are clearly championing for him and for other families like yours. I mean, you're sitting here on this couch, so thank you for that, because we all know who Philip is now, and we know what he's doing and how much he's changing in the world, and how many families, I can't even imagine, that their hearts are changed because of him and you sharing your story. So thank you so much for doing that. Yeah. And thank you both for being here with us today and for helping our families that are just really in the middle of this right now and unsure of next steps, and for just helping us realize that it's okay to do it our own way. So I think that's the best message we could share today. So thank you again for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us for this special back to school episode of the No Foot Too Small podcast. If you want to learn more about some of the resources we talked about today, we will add those to the show notes. If you're a family navigating pregnancy and infant loss, we would love to connect with you. Please reach out to us at nofoottoosmall.org. That's where you go if you want to learn more about our mission or sponsor our next episode, and we will catch you at the next episode.